sitting in the car with the engine ticking itself cool. I thought we were just catching our breath after a long errand day. Then my grandson Adrian turned to me, fingers tight around the keychain I gave him last Christmas, and asked a question that froze the air between us. I can still feel the way the dashboard light washed his face in soft amber, and how the grocery bags rustled like they were listening in. I had no idea a simple ride home would steer both of us onto a brand new road, one I'd been waiting for without knowing it. Before I tell you everything, I want to know something from you. Which city are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments. Dallas, Phoenix, Buffalo, maybe a small town I've never heard of. I love picturing where your roads and porches are while I tell my story. We were parked under the lot's one wobbly street lamp, the kind that hums like a fat bumblebee. The heater made its low, steady whisper, and the faint smell of coffee was still in the cup holder. Mine mostly milk and too much sugar. I'm Lily, 67, and my grandson is Adrian. He's 17 and was named for my late husband, also Thomas, which means I hear his name, and a memory steps into the room with us. The big Thomas taught me how to listen without jumping in to fix things. The younger Adrian is teaching me what I never knew about how boys become men quietly in the middle of ordinary seconds like this one. He didn't say anything for a while. Just watched the fog he made on the cold passenger window and drew a half circle with his knuckle, then wiped it away like he didn't want to leave prints behind. I counted the clicks of the emergency lights on the pickup idling 2 spots over. When he did speak, his voice came out a notch lower than usual, the way voices do when they are carrying something heavy. "Grandma," he said, "could I? Would it be okay if I stayed with you for a while?" The word well stretched between us. Longer than a weekend, shorter than forever. Exactly as long as courage needed to cross from his seat to mine. All the traffic on the boulevard kept going. Brake lights flashed and disappeared like falling embers. My heart pitched forward and back and then found its balance again, the way you do when a car stops short, and you realize you were braced all along. I didn't say of course right away, though every part of me wanted to. I could feel the old familiar Lily stirring, the one who patches and cooks and offers a spare room without asking why. And I let her sit still for a moment. The big Thomas would have squeezed my hand and reminded me, "Ask what he means, not what you're afraid of." "What would a while look like, sweetheart?" I asked. "And how are you really?" He leaned his head back and looked at the ceiling fabric like the words were written there. "Home is loud in a way that feels like it gets inside your bones," he said. "Mom and Dad love me. I know that. But they're sorting themselves out. It's not about me. Except it is, because there isn't anywhere in the house where I can make everything stop for 5 minutes. And I need to think about school, about graduating, about..." He trailed off, twisting the metal ring of the keychain. "I don't want to run away from them. I just need somewhere I can hear myself. Do you get that?" I did more than he knew. I remembered Chicago 1978 when the big Thomas and I squeezed our lives into a Buick with one loose door handle, and drove to a little rental across town instead of staying where people had already decided who we were. I remembered how the quiet of that first night made us feel taller. Hearing yourself is a kind of medicine, and it's not the sort you can pick up at the pharmacy aisle next to the cough drops. "I get it," I said. I watched his shoulders drop just a fraction. "And I'm honored you asked me." He nodded, still not looking at me. I guess I also wanted to ask, could you be the one to teach me to drive? I mean, really teach me. Kat's been busy. Mom tries, but she gets nervous when I brake too hard. And I feel like you. He smiled a little, quick as a strike of a match. You have a different kind of patience, like you let the world be a little messy while you figure it out. I nearly laughed. Of all the things I expected tonight, the only thing more surprising than him asking to live with me was him asking me to sit in the passenger seat when he was at the wheel. Suddenly, the car felt like an invitation with 4 doors and a steering column. I could see the shape of the week ahead. Mornings with toast and scrambled eggs. Afternoons with list making and laundry. Evenings with the soft drum of homework turning into plans. I can teach you, I told him. But we'll do it my way, which means we start slow, keep our tempers low, and celebrate small victories like they're shiny trophies. And if you stay with me, we'll talk to your parents together with respect. No secrets. They love you, and we're not building a new home out of borrowed anger. He swallowed and faced me, eyes shining from the dashboard glow. I don't want to hurt them, he said, and it brought back the small boy he used to be, the one who would bring me fistfuls of dandelions and apologize for picking them out of the neighbor's yard. I just want to breathe. We'll make room for that. I said, we will. He exhaled like he had been practicing holding his breath all day. Outside, a shopping cart coasted on its runaway wheel and kissed the curb, polite as a whisper. Somewhere someone laughed. The lot hummed its insect hum. I peeled back the plastic on a carton of strawberries we bought, offered one to him, and the sweetness of it caught me off guard. I remembered the Big Thomas feeding me berries one at a time from a paper basket 30-odd summers ago. Juice on our knuckles, our future all scaffolding and blueprints. I felt both of them present, the man I married and the boy named for him, and it made the little cabin of our car into a chapel. Let's be practical, I said after a moment, keeping my voice steady. If you stay, your chores are simple. Dishes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, trash on Sunday night, and you keep your room in shape. Curfew at 10 o'clock on school nights, midnight on weekends. Non-negotiable. Homework first. And we eat dinner at the table. Not over the sink, not in front of the TV. People who sit down to a plate together learn each other's days. I will ask questions. I will not interrogate. Do you agree? His yes came out fast like it had been waiting behind his teeth. I like dinner at the table, he said. You light a candle even on meatloaf night. Especially on meatloaf night, I said. There was another question in his eyes. I could tell because he rubbed his thumb over the stamped letters on his keychain and a little nod to both Thomas. I didn't rush him. The best roads, the Big Thomas used to say, don't announce themselves. They appear as a narrow shoulder, then widen mile by mile. What is it? I asked. He took a breath. When you talk about Grandpa, it doesn't feel like a sad story. I mean, I know you miss him, but when you say his name, it's like you're opening a window. He paused. Would it be okay if I asked more about him? Not tonight. Just in general. I want to know who I'm named for, not just the funny stories. Of course, I said, and my voice came out softer than I meant. You deserve the whole map, not just the landmarks. The heater clicked off, then on again. I turned the key one notch so the radio would come alive without the engine. A piano station drifted in, crackling and warm. The kind that plays songs you swear you've heard before, even if you haven't. I thought about how men in your 50s and 60s, yes, I see you there on your recliners and porch steps, carry stories from their first cars like riverstones. The clumsy joy of a left turn taken just right. The way a person looks different sitting behind a wheel because steering makes you responsible. I wanted that for Adrian. Not just the test result they print at the DMV, but the quiet lesson. This is how you guide 2,000 pounds of steel with calm hands. I looked at the empty sweep of the lot. Well, I sat, reaching for the seat lever to slide forward. No time like the present. Switch with me. His eyes jumped wide. Now, I said, at least the basics. Position mirrors where your feet live. We won't move more than the length of a shopping cart, but beginnings count. We got out into the chill, traded sides. I walked around the nose of the car, hand flat to the hood like I was blessing it. When I settled into the passenger seat, he was already adjusting the rear view. I watched him find himself there, small and earnest for a second, then composed. He put his hands on the wheel at 9 and 3. He has listened more than he knows and waited. Seatbelt, I said, and we clicked in unison. Okay. Can you feel the pedal under the ball of your foot? Not your toes. The ball. Good. That's balance, not panic. Mirror. He nodded. Turned the key to accessory. Then one more to ignition. The hum woke up again. Familiar and steady. Foot on the brake. Gently. He did. As I said, we weren't even rolling yet, but I could feel the oxygen change in the car, like he had been standing outside a door, and was now finally allowed to put his hand on the handle. I talked him through shifting into drive, letting the car creep forward on its own patience, and then braking the lightest weight. He did it once, then again. The second time he laughed, one short gust of sound, surprised like a small dog yapping at its echo. Good. I told him again. Now turn. Just an inch of movement in your hands. That's all steering is. Inches done at the right moment. We made a wobbly rectangle around a row of empty spots. A security guard passed, raised 2 fingers in a peace sign and didn't stop. The street lamp hummed. Adrian breathed in a measured way, and I matched him without meaning to. We weren't going fast enough for wind or danger. We were going at the speed of trust. After 6 slow circles and 3 straight lines, his shoulders were lower, and his smile had become a quiet thing that lived without permission at the corner of his mouth. I told him to bring us back to the space where we started and put the car in park. How does it feel? I asked. He considered like when you first walk into a cold lake and your brain says, no way. But then your skin says, this isn't a fight. It's a wake-up. You're good with words, I said. And metaphors. Grandpa used to say that? He asked all the time, I said. Which is why you just earned your first trophy. He looked at me confused and amused as I reached into the grocery bag and handed him the pack of sticky notes I'd bought for my recipe cards. I pulled one off and drew, not well, a tiny gold cup with handles. I stuck it to the center of the steering wheel. For smooth turns made with patience, I said ceremoniously. More trophies to come. He laughed properly then, head tipped back. That sound I wish I could pour into a jar and keep on my nightstand for hard days. When he settled, the question returned to his eyes, the original one, the big one. So staying with you, he said. Do we really tell Mom and Dad together? We two. I said tomorrow evening. I'll call your mother when we get home and set a time. We'll speak gently. We'll ask for their thoughts before we give ours. We'll say this is about finishing the year strong, not running away. And we'll invite them over for meatloaf. Candle lit. Everyone gets to feel like a person, not a problem. He nodded, and something in him untied a small knot. Thank you, he said in a voice I'll remember when I'm old enough to forget where I put my glasses, but not the shape of this night. Thank you for asking, I said. That's brave. Bravery doesn't always look like charging a field. Sometimes it looks like sitting still in a parking lot and saying what you need. We sat in the warmth a moment longer. A song ended on the radio, and the next one came in soft piano and voice, the kind you can sing without thinking. I hummed. He joined off key on purpose and we both laughed again. Then I told him to switch back with me. He did with a dancer's carefulness, like the car might bruise if he bumped it. On the drive home we moved through green lights as if they had been waiting for us. He scrolled a list on his phone, things he would bring from the house, not much. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, a stack of notebooks, a photo of his mom holding him the day he came home from the hospital, the baseball with his father's smeared signature, the lamp shaped like a planet. He asked if he could keep the quilt I made from the Big Thomas's flannels on the end of the bed. I said that quilt has been waiting for exactly this job. We didn't talk the whole way. Sometimes we let the quiet do the heavy lifting. I showed him with my hands on the wheel how to let the car do some of the work, how to release it into its own alignment and then bring it back. He watched. He learned without interrupting. Mutual respect is a kind of road rule, too. When we pulled into my driveway, the porch light bounced off the windshield in a familiar halo. My house looked like itself. The hydrangea bush stubbornly green even this late. The brass mailbox dented in the corner from a winter. I try not to think about the small square window of the kitchen glowing butter yellow. Home but not small. The Big Thomas's boots still by the back door. Polished the week before he died, and never scuffed since. I keep them there because I like the idea that someone is always almost coming in. I told Adrian to grab the light bags, and I took the heavy ones. Have it, but he gently traded me too. I can carry what I bring into a place, he said. That's fair. We unpacked quietly the domestic ballet of eggs to fridge, bread to tin, strawberries to colander. He rinsed them without me asking. I handed him a towel. He dried. When we were done, we stood with clean hands and the soft satisfaction of a task completed together. Tomorrow, I said, we'll make our calls. We'll make a list. We'll start the way we mean to go on. And tonight, he asked, tonight you make up the guest room with me, I said. And then we sit at the table and eat cereal like it's a fancy dessert. Candle lit. 2 trophies earned in one night. He grinned. You're really going to do the candle, aren't you? Especially on cereal night, I said. We set out bowls and lit the wick. The flame quivered, then settled, then burned steady. He told me about the project he's doing in civics, how communities decide where to put parks and why it matters, and I listened like a student. I told him about the time the Big Thomas talked a cranky neighbor into planting tomatoes instead of filing a complaint, and he laughed with me at how stubborn kindness can be. We didn't fix every problem in the world. We didn't even fix every problem in our family, but we agreed on the first step. And sometimes that's the door that changes the house. Later, as I tucked the quilt under his mattress, he smoothed his hand over one of the soft squares, blue and worn, and said, I feel like I'm sleeping under a story. You are, I said. And tomorrow we'll add a chapter. When the house went quiet and I turned off the porch light, I stood a moment with my hand on the boots by the back door. I imagined the big Thomas's smile if he could see how the boy named after him had driven a careful rectangle in a glowing parking lot and asked for a room to think in. I imagined him tipping his head toward the bedroom where a new step was taking shape and saying, "Well, Lily, looks like the road widened." I whispered back into the dark. It did, and the word felt true all the way down to the soles of my feet. The next evening came sooner than I expected. Sleep hadn't been restless, but it was thin like a quilt pulled too short at the edges. I rose early, brewed coffee, and set out the butter dish the way I always do, careful not to scrape too loud so Adrian could rest. The house felt different already, like it had stretched its arms in welcome. The guest room down the hall held the rhythm of another person breathing, and I realized I hadn't heard that sound in years. Not since my husband. That knowledge carried both ache and comfort. Adrian shuffled into the kitchen around 9, hair a bit wild, one sock half rolled. He gave me a sleepy grin, the kind only a teenager can manage, halfway between boy and man. He didn't say good morning. Instead, he asked if I had honey for his tea, which I did, tucked in a jar I'd forgotten. That was the first small victory of the day. The second was that he told me he'd slept well, better than he had in weeks. We went about the morning without much talk, which was its own kind of ease. He did his homework at the dining table while I flipped through a cookbook I didn't need, but liked to pretend I might use more seriously. Around lunchtime the air began to change. Tonight we'd face his parents. The weight of it pressed on me every time I caught sight of him looking out the window, chewing his pencil, restless in his seat. "Grandma," he said at last, "what if they're angry?" "They will be," I told him plainly. "At first, not because they don't love you, but because fear often puts on the mask of anger. They'll worry they've failed you. They'll wonder if this is permanent, and they'll be surprised you asked me before you told them. We'll let them have those feelings, but we won't let those feelings decide for us." He nodded, but his jaw stayed tight. "What if they say no? Then we'll listen," I said. "But I'll stand beside you. They can say no to me. They cannot say no to your need to breathe. Together we'll find a way." The afternoon stretched. I busied myself making a meatloaf just as I promised, with mashed potatoes and green beans, the candle already waiting in the middle of the table. Adrian helped without complaint. He chopped onions, wiped his eyes on his sleeve and grinned through it. He seemed taller just doing that simple task beside me. At 6 sharp the doorbell rang. My daughter's knock. 3 short taps. Always the same. I braced myself and opened the door to find her standing with her husband. Her face held that brittle expression I knew too well. The one that says, "I've been holding in words all day." Her husband, quieter by nature, put a hand at her back like a studying post. They sat. The table looked almost too formal, the way the candle light softened the sharpness of their features. I poured iced tea for everyone, though my daughter hardly touched hers. The silence was thick until Adrian cleared his throat. "Mom, Dad," he began, voice low but steady. "I asked Grandma if I could stay here for a while. Just a while." My daughter's eyes flicked to me, sharp as glass. "You knew about this?" I didn't flinch. "He asked me last night. I told him we'd all talk tonight together." "Stay here," she repeated, turning back to Adrian. "Adrian, your room is at home with us." He looked down at his plate, then back up, meeting her gaze. "I know, Mom. I know you love me. But the house feels loud. Too loud for me to think. You and Dad are trying to figure things out, and I feel like there's no place I can just be still. Here I can. I'm not running away. I'm asking for space." Her husband leaned forward, speaking softly. "Space doesn't mean distance, honey. It means he needs to breathe." For the first time her expression cracked. Her lips trembled, though she pressed them together hard. I reached across the table, not to speak for him, but to steady the moment. "This isn't a rejection," I said gently. "It's a request, and a brave one. He'll be here under rules. Homework, chores, dinner together. You're welcome anytime. This is not a goodbye. It's a pause button, not an ending." Silence held us. The candle flame wavered. Then, like a dam breaking, my daughter let out a long, shaky sigh. She reached for her son's hand, squeezed it. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "You won't," he promised. His voice carried more strength than I'd ever heard from him. "I just need to figure out who I am without all the noise." I need Grandma's help with that. Her tears came then, quick and fierce. Her husband pulled her close, whispering something I couldn't hear. I let them have that moment, only refilling glasses and waiting. At last she nodded. Not fully, not with conviction yet, but enough. Okay, she said, wiping her eyes for a while. But you call every day, even if it's 2 minutes. I will, he said. Ter settled into something quieter, steadier. My daughter's laughter even escaped once when I told the story of Adrian's wobbly parking lot driving lesson. By the time dessert was served, just bowls of ice cream with chocolate sauce, the air was lighter. When they left, my daughter hugged me long and hard. Take care of my boy, she said as though she didn't already know I would. After the door shut and the taillights disappeared down the road, Adrian sat back at the table, staring at the candle still burning. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he whispered, I didn't think it would work. Most good things feel impossible before they happen, I told him. And then they happen anyway. We sat together in that small pool of light, listening to the night press in at the windows. I thought of the big Thomas again. How proud he would have been to see this boy carry his name, not just with letters but with courage. As the flame burned lower, I felt a deep stillness settle in my chest. It wasn't just about giving Adrian a place to breathe. It was about me finding breath too. Realizing that even at 67 new chapters wait, written in the quiet bravery of ordinary nights. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of the best one.